Welcome to CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle and Nik Nanos.
Nick, the Conservatives have been consistently hammering the Liberals on cost of living issues, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has now rolled out a plan for holiday tax relief and checks for some Canadians. The rollout has been a bit messy, especially among seniors. I want you to listen to this clip.
It's not that it won't, well, like I said, it's not going to make me and it's not going to break me. But why are we being singled out just because we didn't work? That's a pile of crap. You know, we've paid, I'm still be 68 years old, and I've paid dues, taxes, whatever, since I was about 17 years old. That's a long time to pay taxes. To help out the economy in this country.
Well, there you go.
Wow. You know, the last thing any politician wants is like someone that looks like a grandma, tearing a strip off of them. You know, like it's never good when seniors are angry. You know, let's face it, Michael, we look at something like, you know, for example, this $250 check or the HST tax stuff. A well-intentioned epic failure, right? Like it's pretty clear what the Liberals are trying to do. They're trying to help working Canadians. And, you know, like a lot of other things that the Liberals have done, you know, the intention might be good, but the implementation, and we've saw this with like small business taxes and other stuff, the implementation has been, why don't we just call it weak or failed, you know? And, you know, the thing is senior citizens, people over 60 vote, and they're a critical group for the Liberals. When we look at the trend line among senior citizens, you know, for those that are over 60, you know, you can see that, you know, the Conservatives are ahead. You know, the Liberals have been generally competitive in this area, but they've been trending down in the last in the last few weeks. So, you know, the thing is for a party that is on the ropes on the ballot numbers and you know, something, I think they were trying to be proactive, but now they're on the defense again. It's kind of like, you know, they try to do something to help move the numbers. It's like, why don't we just say 2 steps forward, 3 steps back? Because I think now people, you know, get to question, you know, like, you know, is this a good policy? And, you know, and it's the same thing on the harmonization front. You know, we have provinces questioning, you know, that they might not have been consulted as much as they wanted to be consulted. And this is a harmonized tax. So, you know, the federal government needs to be a little more thoughtful, careful, whatever you want to call it, measured in a harmonized tax where they have provincial tax partners on that front.
Nick, it's also been an opportunity for the NDP. So originally the Liberals were going to set out the tax holiday on certain items and the $250 checks, which originally did not include seniors who you know, did not work the previous year and made less than $150,000. So now they've separated these bills. How do you think the NDP could gain from this?
Well, you know, the thing is that Jagmeet Singh's initial response, which is to kind of extend it to include seniors, politically is probably a good move. You know, when we looked at that same trend line of Canadians over 60 years of age, Conservatives were first, Liberals second, NDP were third. If the NDP can pick up steam among senior citizens, that would be good. The most important thing is, Michael, this could give a lifeline to the New Democrats to give them political cover to support the Liberals one more time, right? Because then they could say, you know, yeah, we were going to defeat the Liberals or not support them on a confidence motion, but, you know, we're going to hold our nose and vote Liberal because we put pressure on the Liberals and they've extended, you know, this $250 check to to seniors. So it gives them political cover. But let's distill this. If the Liberals think that sending checks for $250 is going to change the political landscape, I think they're sadly mistaken, right? People are worried about paying for the groceries. They're worried about paying for the rent. And you know, people will take the money, right? Because they're not stupid. If you get a check from the government, you're going to take the check and you're going to cash it. But to think that people's votes are going to change because of $250, I don't think so. And, you know, we saw another government on the ropes at the end of a 10-year mandate, Stephen Harper and the Conservatives send out checks to families. That didn't work out too well for him because the Conservatives lost the government after being in power for almost a decade, and Justin Trudeau became prime minister. Okay, so is this kind of like retro hour? It's kind of the Liberals are doing everything that the Conservatives did before they were squashed politically.
It's an initiative also we've seen some provincial governments do. I'm thinking about Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives in Ontario sent out a check for $200, I believe, to something like 15 million people, or that's what he had planned.
Yeah, I don't know. Does he really need to do that? I don't know. Let's face it, people are worried about not just the cost of living, they're worried about their wages keeping pace with the cost of living. You know, where are the politicians that are talking about where jobs are going to come from? Where are the politicians that are going to talk about where prosperity is going to come from? And you know, the thing is, that's what people want to hear about. Where are the jobs for them, well-paying jobs that have a living wage, and where are the jobs for their kids? Where are they going to come from? And you know, it's kind of like you know, there's a massive economic, you know, people have their arm cut off, and you know, politicians are just like, here's a Band-Aid. Well, there's no way that it'll cover, you know, the economic stress that many Canadians are under right now.
Nik, you mentioned that the NDP are third, I think, in terms of the over 60 demographic and support. How do you think this will play out in widespread ballot tracking and popular support?
Well, you know, I think the big question is whether the interplay between the Liberals and the NDP change. You know, because in the under 25-year group, the Conservatives are first, the NDP are in second, Liberals are in third. So that's good news for the NDP there. And you know, the other thing is in the Nanos tracking, when we look at the Nanos tracking number, the level of support between the Liberals and the New Democrats is actually starting to narrow. So in the latest Nanos tracking, we have the Conservatives at 41, up 3. We have the Liberals at 23, right? So back 18 points, down 3, NDP flat at 20. So Liberals 23, NDP at 20. Maybe Jagmeet Singh is hoping that he might get a little bit of a lift from seniors because might be angry with the Liberals to kind of close that gap. But that's the interplay that's probably the most important, because you know, the Conservative support has been at basically 4 out of every 10 Canadians or thereabouts, you know, for months and months. The big changes have always been between the Liberals and the New Democrats.
Nik, you said before on this show, you know, before Jagmeet Singh tore up, in his words, the deal with the Liberals to help support them on confidence motions, that he would be attacked on every side, and you know, the pressure would be extreme on him, and this is no way for him to sort of stand against the Liberals while still sort of maybe supporting them.
Yeah.
Listen to this clip of the NDP leader.
We were told there would be anyone earning less than $150,000 would get this. We assume that would include obviously seniors, people living with disabilities, and students. Right now, we learned based on Friday that it's going to exclude some of the most vulnerable. That is wrong. The Liberals need to fix this. We can move ahead very rapidly this week with the GST holiday. Let's get that done. But the Liberals have to fix the problem.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
That was a big political flex. You know, Jagmeet Singh is fit to start off with, but this was a political flex. You know, he's using the words like demand, you know, the immediate implementation of the GST, HST holiday, and also to fix the problem with the $250 checks. You know, he's basically signaling, if you can do, you know, if the Liberals can do this, they can survive. And, you know, for a government that is focused on surviving or trying to survive at least until the spring, basically what Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats have given them a path to survive the Christmas holidays. Maybe we can say the holiday season came a little early for the Liberals if they so decide to open the gift from Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats, because, you know, if the Liberals move forward with their proposed tax holiday on the GST, HST, and if they decide to extend the $250 check for seniors, then they know that they can survive. They won't need the Bloc or anybody else, and that they can survive another time. And Jagmeet Singh will have cover. He'll have political cover to say, yeah, I still don't like the Liberals, but I do like this thing that they did, kinda. And as a result, and they fixed the problem in terms of expanding the checks to seniors, so he can chalk up a win and then have political cover to support the Liberals one more time. See, I don't know how many times he's going to be able to do that, though.
That was my next question, Nick. I mean, is the plan to keep doing this until maybe the spring budget? What do you think the long-term goal is here for the NDP?
Yeah, well, I think he can get to the spring budget because, the budget vote, which would be a confidence vote, won't be until later in the spring, depending on the parliamentary calendar. So if the Liberals, I don't know, are we allowed to say dodging bullets? Anyways, and I know we do believe in gun control and all that kind of stuff because we are Canadians or whatever. But the Liberals can dodge the non-confidence bullet one more time if they decide to accommodate the New Democrats and extend that $250 check to senior citizens.
Nick, we're going to take a little break, but when we come back, we'll look at the latest provincial election outcome. Nick, we had our latest provincial election. It feels like we've had one every week for a while in Nova Scotia, and the Progressive Conservatives have returned to power with a majority government. What is the rush with all these provincial elections?
Well, hey, Michael, you got to say, not only did they win, it sounds like ho-hum, yeah, they won. They crushed it. They absolutely crushed this election, and an election that could have been attacked as being unnecessary because he's like way ahead of schedule, the Progressive Conservatives in Nova Scotia. The other key thing, New Democrats, the official opposition in Nova Scotia, Jagmeet Singh's got to be happy with that. He's also got to be looking at some of those ridings that the New Democrats provincially won and perhaps try to align some of the resources federally there because the New Democrats compared to the Liberals and the Conservatives, the New Democrats federally and provincially generally are much more aligned and cooperative than the other two major parties. But yeah, but an example of a party, the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservatives, the government wanting to get ahead of the federal election and worked out pretty well. The other thing we'd say, incumbent government, we talked about incumbents getting a rough ride, not so much in Nova Scotia. So, that's we're looking with a pretty comfortable majority provincially and for the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservatives and the NDP being the official opposition. The NDP have been the opposition before. So good news for the New Democrats on this front. Absolutely bad news for the Liberals. It's kind of like the provincial Liberals in disarray, the Liberal brand on its heels. And you know what? If you're a federal Liberal member of Parliament in Nova Scotia, it's kind of like, is this a canary in the Nova Scotia coal mine? I don't know. Maybe.
Nick, I feel like we may be headed for an Ontario election as well. What's your sense on that in terms of Doug Ford's latest political moves?
Michael, did I see a little glint in your eye when you talked about another provincial election? Are you just that much of a junkie? It's like, oh,
maybe, yes.
But example of another conservative, progressive conservative, we should say, Doug Ford, the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, wanting to go early, getting ahead of the federal election. The thing is, he's been Doug Ford's been in the news a lot, right? He's been in the news about free trade. He's been in the news, with goodies and stuff like that. And, it looks like some of these conservative governments, right? And I think I put Saskatchewan in that category also, but some of these conservative governments thinking they all want to get ahead of the federal election, because I think one thing that they probably do know that if and when Pierre Poilievre forms the next government, which he is positioned to form a government, that there'll probably be some tough medicine in the first few months, at least, and that provincial conservative-minded parties and governments want to get ahead of that potential bad news.
Nick, one of the things Doug Ford has done recently is promised to tear up some bike lanes in Toronto. What do you make of that?
It's kind of like, I think this is a new reality television show. Political bike lane wars, right? kind of one of those things where, and Toronto is basically ground zero for these bike lane wars where, some of these main arteries, main streets like Eglinton Avenue, where, the sidewalks have been redone, very nicely done, but that they're bike lanes. The bike lanes have cut into parking spots, it's cut into traffic. And that, what we're talking about is bikers. Why do we call them cyclists, not bikers? Because that might be something else. Cyclists versus drivers and friction on that front. So much so that the provincial government wants to intervene. They've put money on the table to rip out bike lanes and also are engaging in approval of bike lanes. Wow. Like when the provincial government is in the business of approving bike lanes, that's kind of like, I don't know whether we want to call that overreach, but for municipalities, they are creatures of the provincial government. So it's kind of interesting that there'll be time that some politician or minister of the crown will be spending time reviewing bike lane requests. But this is a hot potato politically. And in research that we've done with CTV News, it suggests that there's appetite actually to try to figure out a solution to have bike lanes, but not bike lanes that take up traffic lanes. To try to figure out, are there other creative ways to have a cycling infrastructure that might not have as much of a material disruption to the current bike lane approach? And then expect the mayor of Toronto and the premier of Ontario to kind of duke it out, and then where will the Liberals land on this? This is probably a good strategy for the Conservatives to pick up votes in Toronto, suburban Toronto, and to hold on to that, and to probably try to use this as a wedge against not just the New Democrats but also the Liberals.
It's amazing to me, Nick, that Toronto traffic congestion has become such a major issue. It's become a provincial-wide issue, and Doug Ford's idea of tearing up bike lanes is controversial to say the least, and in fixing that issue, but
stoking road rage and cyclist rage. I guess the common denominator is rage, Michael, rage on the roads between cyclists who want more bike lanes and drivers who want to have less traffic.
Well, there's another issue facing Mr. Ford and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and that is the tariff threat from incoming U.S. President Donald Trump. He's threatened 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. The premiers, including Ford, have met with the Prime Minister. What do you see in the future for this issue, Nick? It doesn't look good.
No. Well, it's always bad whenever any country says that they're going to slap a 25% tariff on anything from Canada, especially bad when it's the United States. And I think, Doug Ford said that it was like your best friend stabbing you in the back. I think he's wrong. It's your best friend stabbing you in the front, not in the back, right? So there's no, sneaking up and stabbing in the back. Donald Trump has said that he's going to institute tariffs. He's instituted tariffs. He's now threatening to slap tariffs when he comes into power in January 2025. The thing is that Canadians have to really realize that we are reliant on the United States. We have to realize that it is not an equal relationship, even though we are separate and independent countries. Their economy is 10 times bigger than ours. And if the Americans decide to crush us, they can crush us, right? And the other thing is that regardless of whether Donald Trump actually institutes these tariffs, these proposed tariffs, it will have a chill effect, a massive chill effect on American investment and other investment into Canada, because maybe he'll take his foot off the pedal, the tariff pedal, so to speak. But just the risk of tariffs will be enough for some investors to focus on the United States instead of Canada, because so he's actually achieved what he wants to achieve just by threatening the tariffs, whether he delivers on it. And he's laid the groundwork for the opening of the discussions on the review of the Canada, US, Mexico free trade agreement. And it's not going to be pleasant.
I was just thinking, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, she's been through this before, and it's looks like that's in her future again. Do you think Canadians have a lot of confidence in the Liberal government in dealing with this?
I think Canadians are unsure because on the one hand, so here are two fair assertions for both of the two major parties. The Liberals can rightly say they negotiated with Donald Trump before and they got an agreement. So they can say that, regardless of whether people like it or not. The other thing is that, so that's the Liberals. The Conservatives can rightly say, we're probably more likely to get along. And, and if I can just, not just because it's Donald Trump, but when Brian Mulroney and Ronald Reagan, when the Republicans were in power in the United States and the conservatives, the progressive conservatives at that time in power in Canada, they did agree on a number of issues. So, setting aside populist politics, the conservatives in Canada can rightly say, when there's a conservative-minded president and a conservative-minded prime minister, there are some commonalities on issues. But the conservatives have to make sure that they're not friendly, but not really close friends, because the last thing Canadians want is someone is a politician that looks like they're sucking up to Donald Trump. It doesn't look like Pierre Poilievre's going down that particular path, because he's actually come out a little hard saying, we'll fight fire with fire. What that exactly means, we don't know. But I think there's a claim for both the Liberals and the Conservatives, and why don't we call it a one-legged claim, not a two-legged claim, that they can deal with Donald Trump, and that either of them would be the best to deal with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's strategy would be, and yes, I noticed that he hit pretty hard, against Trump's tariff threat. Was that a surprising move to you, Nick, or does it make sense politically?
I think it makes sense politically, because the thing is that think of it this way, Trump's now talking tough, but the thing is that love or hate the guy, he's a good negotiator. So he's come out hard and tried to disrupt his key trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, and that gives him room to, if he gets what he wants. And the interesting thing is he's linked this to both individuals crossing from Canada and the United States, illegals, asylum seekers, and also the fentanyl stuff. Mm-hmm. So there is latitude for the Liberal. The Liberals have latitude that if they have something, and let's face it, if there is fentanyl production in Canada going into the United States, it is a valid thing for the US president to call us out on that, in the same way that we would be calling out Americans and should be calling out Americans if it was the other way around. So there's latitude for the Liberals to act on that. And I think there's also latitude for the Liberals to act on the border to one extent or another. So there's wiggle room there. And I think he's provided some negotiating wiggle room if the Liberals can move on that. And the same thing applies to the Mexicans.
Nick, I think that's it for this show. As always, thanks very much.
Take it easy.